Hello, and welcome to Your Brand Express podcast, the podcast where business owners, authors, coaches get a chance to articulate their processes and how they express their brands. With your hosts, Carl and CJ Allen. Get your favorite cup of coffee or tea and get a notepad and enjoy the ride. All right, everyone. What is going on, everyone? This is Carl Allen and this is CJ Allen, and we have Faith Christiansen, the wonderful Faith Christiansen, with us. How are you today?
I am freaking fantabulous. How about you?
I'm fantastic. We get to do this. I love it.
Let's go.
Well, hey, this is Faith Christiansen, everyone, and basically she turns average websites into gorgeous automated sales funnels machines with simple, inexpensive tech without overwhelm. And she's a best-selling author of Earn More, Work Less, Live Happy. And she's a podcaster. And she's a speaker. I love that. That's a great description about you. I love it.
That is a fantastic intro. That is right there.
Thank you, LinkedIn.
Shout out LinkedIn.
Love it. Well, it's great to have you aboard today. I'm really excited to talk to you, and just looking at your profiles on online, and you had me at automation. That's one of my favorite words, and it's so important for people like me. I'm a solopreneur, and for people like me, it's automation. It's like, we love it, and we need that. We need more of it.
We do, that's for sure. We want to work less, right? Work smarter, not harder. It's a thing.
Amen.
It's a key principle in life, man. It's crazy.
Absolutely. And how many people are working a lot harder than they need to be because they're buying into some old school thought, something their parent taught them, something society's taught them that just doesn't need to exist, especially since COVID hit and showed us that it doesn't need to be that way anymore.
True indeed. And I love what you just said. You're talking about just living the old patterns of life, and maybe even starting this interview off. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and what got you into doing what you do now?
Absolutely. So a couple of years ago, I was running a six-figure business in Africa. We were going well. I was running a humanitarian foundation over there. But like so many people, I was buying into the hustle culture where you're working it and you're burning things at both ends. You have kids, but you forget they exist because you got to work harder, right? I was forgetting that I was married and I ended up getting divorced. I ended up burning out and hitting the ground and just realizing, you know what? This is the one life that we have. And so many of us are working more than we're actually living. And tomorrow we could get hit by a bus and then we'd be sitting there going, well, I regret that I didn't, remember that my kids existed. I regret that I didn't do anything that made me happy. And I went, I don't want to live like that anymore. And especially since we live in an era where tech can do so much of the heavy lifting for us. And some of the things that are being done are just not necessary. Like, let's be honest, the 9 to 5 or the 8 to 5 was created by Henry Ford in like the 20s so that people could still maintain his factory and work at a decent productivity level, but also so that they had enough spare time to be able to buy motor cars. And we are still hustling and living that. And bosses these days, instead of just giving us the tasks that are the highest income producing with the least amount of effort behind them, they're throwing stuff at us to fill time. And I don't want to live like that anymore. I don't want to buy into the hustle, the bro marketing where you got to work and not exist. I wanted to actually live happy and have time to learn the dang piano, which I suck at, and to learn to speak Spanish.
Now, how are you with Spanish?
I suck still, but I'm trying.
But you have the time.
I do.
You
and
do.
I've learned now, no picante. I do not want spicy food.
Oh, no, what you said is powerful because, it's so important. It's, living the life that we have. Our life is so precious. We are a miracle, as individuals. And when we can find ways to be able to make the money we want to make, have more time, be productive, it's a good thing. And it's very smart. And but it's easy to kind of live according to the way society goes, the way society is, even if it was set up years ago. I'm a firm believer that it's always good to change patterns, because it's good for you and it's good for our brains as well.
And so many people these days are getting stress-related diseases. Like, how many autoimmune diseases and that do people have these days? Because they're constantly stressed out of their mind. They're not getting paid fairly. Everyone's hustling everyone's prices into the ground. Imagine a world where someone said their price and we're like, cool, we paid it. And then they could then pay their staff fairly. And then they themselves could live the happy life that they designed their business for. Imagine if all the money wasn't going to the top 1% because everybody just paid everybody fairly.
That would be nice. Imagine. As we say here in Boston, facts.
Facts. That's the term.
Is that right, CJ? CJ has to help me out, because I'm
I got you with the Atlas. I got you.
I got it right? Okay. Yeah, he has to help me out with with the cool words, so I appreciate that. And so, Faith, tell us, like, who do you work with? What type of businesses and do you work with?
So I work with a lot of coaches. I work with a lot of podcasters and authors who they want to be able to earn more. They want to be able to change lives and provide value in the marketplace, but they don't want to be trapped behind a computer 24/7. They don't want to be paying, equivalent to a shop overhead in text subscriptions every month. They want simple. They want to know the highest income producing activities. They want to just do those income producing activities, have focus, and then get off their dang computers and go out and live the happy life that everybody starts their business for. But very few have the time because they're hustling behind the screens all the time.
That's powerful. I love it. Now, I'm curious, what is your favorite? Do you have a favorite, or should we say it, if you have a favorite that you like to kind of work towards, or all of them together? Is it a mixture? As far as solopreneurs, podcasters, which...
I work a lot with coaches, especially health coaches and life coaches. But the thing about it is, every coach of some kind, every consultant service provider, they can be a podcaster. Every podcaster can be an author. So it's funny because I work with coaches, but we often turn them into podcasters and authors. And some people, they start with authors, and let's be realistic. You cannot earn a decent amount of money selling just a book. Truth, straight up, you can't, right? But you can take that book and use it as a tool to lead people to something else that can hit your numbers, right? Same with podcasts. You cannot make a full-time income on ads, because the general ad is like $25 per 1,000 listeners. So if you are a new podcaster, you're probably not getting the ad spend unless you're really smart, and we have strategies that we teach. But, so how can you earn more while working less? So you have to have strategic tools, and your podcast is a traffic tool. Your book is a traffic tool. So, using these tools, so everyone at the end of the day, there's some kind of coach or service consultant, whether they're an author, a podcaster, or a coach. So,
wow, it sounds to me like you're one who helps coaches to be able to connect the dots, because in their journey, we say customer journey, in their entrepreneur journey, there are different stops or different locations they go to, but you're able to help them connect the dots.
Absolutely. And have a simple path. I don't know how many people but if you get on LinkedIn or Facebook, they've got, this week they're launching a coaching program. Next week they're launching a lead magnet. The week after they got a challenge. The week after that they got a webinar, right? Now what they're doing is they're confusing them dang selves, because they're constantly having to create content, and they're confusing their audiences, because their audiences are like, what the hell do I start with these people? So what I do is I teach people, okay, well, what's the first step in your chain? Whether they're coming from LinkedIn, whether they're coming from your podcast, what's the first step in your chain? And if you want to be able to earn more, you need to make sure that first step is not a free strategy call, because you will burn your backside out very fast, right? So a group tool that can qualify people. And then what's your next step after that? One that, a lot of people don't know their numbers. Like, let's just say everyone comes to me and they're like, I want to earn 10K a month. Sweet. And then they tell me they have a $100 product. And I'm like, that's like 1,000 products you have to sell this month to be able to hit that 10K, right? That is 1,000 people you have to convince to get a credit card out and pay you. Now, that's not taking into account that you need 4 more at least to say no, right? So people don't know their numbers. So if you say you have a $10,000 goal and you don't have at least a $500 product, you're already putting yourself on the back step. But having that simple path that people are following, and I can tell you, if you focused on that simple path for a year, you would be wickedly further ahead than the person who's here, and then they're here, and then they're here, and they're here, and people are confused, and they're overwhelmed, and there's no automation because they don't have time. They're on to the next shiny object.
So you simplify things.
Simplify.
And their entrepreneurship journey. I love that. And I love that. And then, because, I know for me, even as an entrepreneur, we could feel that pressure to say, oh, I got to do this or I got to do that. Or they're listening to this coach or that coach. And then you kind of get that squirrel syndrome, squirrel,
Mm-hmm.
and you look in different places for something that can help you. And correct me if I'm wrong, but when I see your content, it seems like you give people the freedom to be themselves as well.
Absolutely. Because, I tried that fake it till you make it stuff, right? And like even myself, right at this moment in time, I'm reevaluating. Like, I can do a podcast episode like that. If you give me audio, done. It's done, right? But if I have to sit there and I have to put makeup on and I have to get the video and I have to have all the mental breakdowns that go with the video, like, it just doesn't align with me. And that's what I love about you is you're showing me I can do TikTok and get 26 likes on a post and I don't even have to show my dang face. Like, dude, come on, And that's what it's about. It's about being you. Because at the end of the day, I try to be someone else. And guess what? I attracted people that like that person and I really didn't like them. Like, they weren't my people. They're not people that I wanted to work with. They drove me insane. I wanted to kill myself and them by the end of the day, So just being you, your story, your method, your way of talking to people, it's just so much easier.
Wow, I love that. And I think about it, it's like that idea of you being you. And I like telling people, even I put that in the content too. And I appreciate you mentioning that. Yes, you can do videos without showing your face. Absolutely. But when I put out content, I love telling people, like, there's no one else on this planet who can be like you.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we're selling our services and products, that's what we're selling. We're selling ourselves, meaning we're selling who we really are, who are our authentic selves, and even, people have a hard time talking about the whole concept of authenticity. But the truth of the matter is we have it already. It's just about drawing it out.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And, you have that little voice inside you that's like, do this. And you're like, hell no. Like, you have that, what you should be doing. You have this voice where you want to talk, but quite often we filter ourselves because it's not professional enough. It doesn't go with the brand that we're supposed to. Like, let's be honest. All of these people who are perfect on Instagram, there's no hair out of place. Like, people are just like, scroll. Like, but if you get on there and you're like, dude, I hate showing up on video. I freaking hate it, right? How many people in your audience understand that? They're like, dude, I hate showing up too. And then you put the Disney moment in it where, you know what? I'm learning how to show up for 30 seconds. And maybe in a year from now, I can show up for a whole video episode, but it's not what I want to do right now.
That's true. I love that. Faith, I love what you stand for. And I love that you're yourself, and I love your image. I don't even know if I should call it image. I love how you present yourself on online.
Right.
It's so cool. It's so original. And I feel like it's so authentic. And of course, with this podcast, we're talking about people expressing their brands. And what we've been talking about is, coaches expressing their brands. Like, what would be a first step that a coach can take when it comes to expressing their brands, when it comes to engaging their audience, like on their websites or automations? Any tips you can give?
So the first thing that I'll say is that hugely people need to dial in their message. A lot of people that come to me, they're trying to reach everyone. And as a result, they reach no one. So for instance, I had a woman that come to me the other day who's a health coach who has like a sleeping program for babies, right? I said to her, well, who's your target market? She said, well, every mum needs a sleeping program. I'm like, yeah, but and working mum, like a corporate mum or a solopreneur mum, needs that baby to sleep because she needs to be awake enough tomorrow to be able to make the money, to be able to show up for clients, right? Whereas a stay-at-home mum has different reasons for buying a get your baby to sleep program. They have 3 kids, they're frazzled, they got housework to do, they got a husband to please, whatever, right? So there's 2 different buying messages there, and there's 2 different sets of emotional triggers. So one of the things that is so important to my clients is I teach them, what is your message? What do you stand for? What do you stand against? Because if you can't speak to a specific person, you're going to convert no one, because you're not going to connect with anyone. They're not going to go, oh my God, freak, that's me. That woman's in my head. How did she freaking know that? You know? So the first step to in the automation is to figure out who. Like, who are they? What are their pain points? What are their frustrations? What are their long-term desires? What do they need in order to buy? And the other thing that I would say is stop overcomplicating it. Like, how many times have you bought a program and you're like, oh, great, there's 52 videos. Yay! And you start it and you quit it because there's too much, right? So having a method, what are your 3 to 7 steps that you can get people the result they want and some kind of transformation in as little content as possible, because people pay more when there's less and they can get the results faster.
I love what you said. I love all what you said. And I love when you said, you talked about helping people to dial in their message and to figure out who they're speaking to. You know, that's so important. I know with us, when we're working with people, sometimes, you know, and I know the urge is to want to be all over the place. And then on top of that, things are already rolling for different business owners. So that means they have so many other things to think about while they're moving forward. And now they got to think about going in that direction, dialing in their message and figuring out who they need to speak to.
Yep.
And I find that to be one of the biggest challenges as far as with one being on their journey, because, we get distracted. But if we can figure out how to dial in and figure out who we're speaking to, and like you mentioned, their pain points, their struggles, their desires, and we already live in a society where, people don't like to listen to each other. Yeah. So being one who can learn how to do that, learn how to pay attention, in the artist world, we say, keep your ears to the ground, because it's so important, because that, like you mentioned, that speaks to the customer that they're trying to gain, or the relationship they're trying to build with that customer. So I really appreciate what you said about that. And, can you suggest any tools or any suggestions that one can get to that place where they can focus on, okay, let me dial in with my message?
So the thing that I see is, we're taught by people like Gary Vee, and we're taught by, Grant Cardone and all of those names to be everywhere. But I don't know about you, Carl, but I don't have $200,000 a month to pay in content creators, like, just straight truth, right? So the first thing that I would suggest is, instead of trying to be everywhere on social media, pick where your clients are and be there. Do it well, right? Have conversations, because at the end of the day, if you post and ghost, no social media platform is going to give you time, right? You're not going to get the organic views. So one of the biggest mistakes that I see for people when they're trying to dial in their message, or, they're trying to get clients, is they're everywhere. And as a result of being everywhere, they're nowhere, because they don't have the time to actually be able to speak to people. Because you may post, but a lot of the conversions don't happen on your post. Your conversions happen in messengers, right? When you're talking to people, when you're commenting to people, when they're getting to know you. So dialing in your message and listening to the words your target market is saying. Like some of my biggest episodes on my podcast are when I went, dude, you're overwhelmed. Because they're like, oh my God, I so am. I so am. Like all the big experts, they teach people to use ClickFunnels and Kajabi. Now that's great for them who have tech teams, but the majority of people, ClickFunnels and Kajabi is so freaking overwhelming. They have no idea to start, right? So, you know, having those things like simplifying and going, okay, well, this is the one platform I'm on. I have 11 ones that I teach my client. This is the one social media platform I'm on. This is my one path. This is the customer journey, like you talked about before. This is my message, because a lot of people are scared to niche down on their message because they're like, oh my God, like it's like, I can't talk to that. Like, I'm not going to have enough customers. So they have this scarcity mindset. Whereas if you know, like me, I know I'm talking to life coaches and health coaches, I go looking for them on social media. I know the hashtags they're using. The same with TikTok, like as you show. You know where they are so you can connect strategically. Instead of connecting with every mum or every dad in your case, you connect specifically with your target market from the start. So there's a higher chance of conversion.
Well, first of all, that's kind of controversial in a good way, because, you know, what I find is that specifically speaking to pick one platform.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you have a group of coaches saying pick a whole bunch of platforms or you got to be everywhere, you know, what I find is that here's a disclaimer. I don't find a lot of people saying here's a disclaimer. When you're starting out, you should consider one, or you may want to consider one, or if it's two, you should consider that, because you're going to be overwhelmed. You're going to get overwhelmed. There are very few coaches I found to say that. And so, you know, but it's very important because people will, you know, by the time people figure it out, 3 years goes by, 5 years goes by.
And that's it. And like you just said, pick one or two, right? But at the end of the day, it's social media, meaning media, you post your content, but social is the first word. Now, if you're so focused on creating contents for 6 platforms, as an example, right? Because you shouldn't be posting the same content across all the platforms if you're listening to the gurus, right? Hello, content overwhelm, right? But you can do 1 or 2 platforms strategically and do them well. And the thing is, when you do them well, guess what? People start to see you. The algorithms start to reward you for being on their platform, keeping people on their platform, allowing them to have time to advertise to people, so you get more organic reach. But when you're posting on LinkedIn, and then you're posting on Facebook, and then you're posting on TikTok, then you're on YouTube, then you're on Instagram, dude, you don't have enough hours in the day to interact that much, especially if you're someone who wants to work less. Like, there's just not enough hours. Even if you spent 1 hour, which is like the minimum, or 30 minutes, right? That's like 6 hours. Who's got freaking time for 6 hours on social media? I don't. Not on my list to do.
Facts. As CJ would say, facts.
And then you got to consider the scrolling on the next like pages and everything. So that's like 8. Who knows? I don't know how long that is, but
way too many hours. We don't want to be behind a screen, right?
Right.
So that's it. If you're someone who wants to earn more, know your numbers. If you're someone who wants to work less, pick your platforms, pick your message, get focused, so you can live happy, which is what we all start our businesses for, right?
Right. Well, these are some great tips. Can you give us one more tip? One more tip on how one could express their brands through automation in their website and online marketing.
So who are you? Who are you? What are your values? Because if you don't know your values, you're probably going to attract people that are against your values. So for instance, for me, I used to attract these people who were hardcore hustlers, and they had to have everything done in this next minute. They needed to have, everything looking perfect, but they didn't really want to do the work, right? So who are you? What are your values? Because quite often our perfect customers, our dream customers are us, but a few steps behind. So if you know yourself and what did you need in those moments, what was really important to you when you were finding out this solution, you know the pains you felt. So finding people who are like you is going to make your business so much happier, because they're going to be people who are like, oh my God, she's me. Like, I love her. She's perfect, right? You're going to know the pain they went through because you went through it yourself. So, really dialing into who you are and what you want and what your goals are and what your values are should be guiding your entire business and your entire message, instead of trying to be everything to everyone and everywhere.
That resonates. So Faith, you're saying you got to do the work? You got to do the self-work, really?
Do. You know what? We are not the sipping cocktails on the beach with 1 hour's work a day kind of people. We got to work smarter, obviously. But I want to work. I love my clients. I want to help them. I want to succeed, right? I just don't want to be doing it 8 hours a day.
I love that. And I love what you said too, because I find that, the more you do it and the more you do the self-work, the more seasoned you get. And seasoning is important, especially if you can get seasoning, the maturing, if you could get seasoned and matured on your own, meaning you're doing the work, it makes you reflect as you experience what you're going through with your customers. And then it gives you more wisdom.
Absolutely. And, like what you're saying, like you're seasoned, you start to learn, oh, Lord, I did that activity and I did that activity, but there's no actual return of investment on that. And then if you're doing the work, you got to do the internal work too, to know, well, did I do that activity just because I didn't want to do that activity, which is the actual income producing activity? Because I do that a lot, right? If you tell me I got to record a YouTube video this week or 6 reels, my butt is doing the accounting or something else, right? Because I want to avoid that activity. So like you're saying, as you become seasoned, you know what the income producing activities, that 80-20 rule, the 20% of the tasks that bring the 80% of the results. But quite often we don't want to do that activity because this one's more comfortable,
Right on. I love it. And I find with that journey, you're given the ability, you actually give yourself the ability more to hold yourself accountable. But that's kind of a scary thing to do, to kind of go in that direction. Like you mentioned, like, hey, I'll do the accounting. I don't want to do the video. I'm the opposite. I do the video. I don't want to go do the accounting, But the good thing is when you realize that you can see it, you're able to hold yourself accountable. Get someone to help hold you accountable. I think that's important as well. But I'm saying that because I think there's such a power in that experience that you get,
Yeah.
So it's really cool that you mentioned that.
Yeah. And accountability is everything. Like, let's be honest. One of the biggest things that I do with all my clients, I have a client this week and I've been working with her for a year. She's one of my retainer clients. That woman has pretty butterfly syndrome. I can't even explain, right? So my job as her, whatever you call it, mentor, tech support, whatever, is like, focus. This is what you said you wanted. This is what you said you're going to do. No pretty butterfly, shiny object syndrome up in this house. So accountability is massive.
Right on. Right on. Well, Faith, are there any other tips you'd like to give? Any, as we kind of wrap up our interview, are there any tips that you'd like to give for our listeners? Any extra tips?
I would love to say that automation is key. Like, honestly, if you want to get out of behind the screen, having a system, having a process, and specifically one that doesn't cost you $300 a month, because let's be honest, there are so many platforms out there that can do the job of ClickFunnels and Kajabi, for example, right? That don't cost us a house rent. Because at the end of the day, if we're business owners, our goal is to be profitable. And if before I can pay my family, I got to pay $300 in tech subscriptions, well, that's not smart business, in my opinion. So really dialing in your customer journey and then having an automation system behind it so that I can say, oh my God, Carla, I want you on my podcast. Here's the form. Go fill it out. From there, it automatically leads you to book in. I don't have to do anything but show up. So having that tech, having that automation behind you truly helps you to be able to get off behind the screens. My only goal nowadays is to help my clients and market. I have a simple system that everybody goes through. One leads to the next, that leads to the next. And that's it. That's it. Simplicity is so important. The more you try to complicate it, the more you add, the more overwhelmed you are, the more overwhelmed your customers are, and the less results you will have as a result.
Well, that's powerful. Now,
True.
if one's looking to simplify their steps with their website and automation, where can they go to find you?
So obviously, my podcast, Earn More, Work Less, Live Happy. We are on there every day and we are busting things, those kinds of myths. Also, I have a workshop that I run live systematically and the latest replay is always there. So socialsellerslife.com/workshop, or just look for the Earn More, Work Less, Live Happy show in any of the podcast apps or YouTube.
Well, there you have it. Faith, thank you so much for being with us. We enjoyed having you and we look forward to talking some more.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course.
We hope you enjoyed our podcast. If you would be so kind, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, and or if you're listening to any of our platforms, whether it's Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whichever one, please be so kind to give us a 5-star rating if you enjoyed the podcast. And we'll talk to you soon.